life, if I should struggle to survive such grief. I will not strive, nor leave you sore forlorn. At least I'll follow you to death. If not the urn, at least the lettered stone shall keep us still together. If your bones are not united with my bones, 'tis sure our names must be united." Overcome with grief, she could not say another word, but she continued wailing, and her groans were heaved up from her sorrow-stricken breast. At early dawn she went from her abode down to the seashore, where most wretchedly she stood upon the spot from which he sailed, and sadly said, "He lingered here while he was loosening the cables, and kissed me on this seashore when he left me here." And while she called to recollection all that she had seen when standing there, and while she looked far out on flowing waves from there, she noticed floating on the distant sea— what shall I say? At first even she could not be sure of what she saw. But presently, although still distant, it was certainly a floating corpse. She could not see what man he might be, but because it seemed to her it surely was a shipwrecked body, she was moved as at an omen, and began to weep. And moaning as she stood there, said, "Ah, wretched one, whoever it may be! Ah, wretched is the wife whom you have left!" As driven by the waves, the body came still nearer to her, she was less and less the mistress of herself the more she looked upon it, and when it was close enough for her to see its features, she beheld her husband. "It is he!" she cried, and then she tore her face, her hair, her royal robe, and then, extending both her trembling hands towards Ceyx, "So, dearest one, so do you come to me again!" she cried. "O luckless mate!" A mole, made by the craft of man, adjoins the sea and breaks the shoreward rush of waves. To this she leaped, it seemed impossible, and then, while beating the light air with wings that instant formed upon her, she flew on, a morning bird, and skimmed above the waves. And while she lightly flew across the sea, her clacking mouth, with its long slender bill, full of complaining, uttered moaning sounds. But when she touched the still and pallid form, embracing his dear limbs with her new wings, she gave cold kisses with her hardened bill. All those who saw it doubted whether Ceyx could feel her kisses, and it seemed to them the moving waves had raised his countenance. But he was truly conscious of her grief, and through the pity of the gods above, at last they both were changed to flying birds, together in their fate. Their love lived on, nor in these birds were marriage bonds dissolved, and they soon coupled and were parent birds. Each winter, during 7 full days of calm, Halcyone broods on her floating nest, her nest that sails upon a halcyon sea. The passage of the deep is free from storms throughout those 7 full days, and Aeolus, restraining harmful winds within their cave, for his descendants' sake gives halcyon seas. An old man saw the 2 birds fly across the wide extended sea, and praised their love undying to the end. His old friend, who stood near him, said, "There is another bird which you can see skimming above the waves with folded legs drawn up." And as he spoke, he pointed at a dive-dapper, which had a long throat, and continued, "It was the first son of a great king, as Ceyx was, and if you wish to know his ancestry, I can assure you he descended from Ilus, Assaracus, and Ganymede, taken by Jupiter, and old Laomedon, and Priam, ruler at the fall of Troy. Aesicus was the brother of the great illustrious Hector, and if he had not been victimized by a strange fate in youth, he would have equalled Hector's glorious fame. Hector was child of Hecuba, who was daughter of Demas. Alexiroe, the daughter of the 2-horned Granicus, so rumour has it, secretly brought forth Aesicus, hidden under Ida's shade. He loathed the city, and away from court frequented lonely mountains and the fields of unambitious peasants. Rarely he was seen among the throngs of Ilium. Yet, neither churlish nor impregnable to love's appeal, he saw Hesperia, the daughter of Cebrennus, while she was once resting on the velvet-shaded banks of her sire's cherished stream. Aesicus had so often sought for her through the woods. Just when he saw her while she rested there, her hair spread on her shoulders to the sun, she saw him, and without delay she fled, even as the frightened deer runs from the wolf, or as the water-duck, when she has left her favoured stream, surprised, flies from the hawk. Aesicus followed her, as swift with love as she was swift with fear. But in the grass a lurking snake struck at her rosy heel, and left its venom in her flesh, and so her flight was ended by untimely death. Oh, frantic, he embraced her breathless form and cried, "Alas! Alas that I pursued! I did not dream of such a dreadful fate. Success was not worth such a price. I and the snake together caused your death. The serpent gave the wound. I was the cause. Mine is the greater guilt, and by my death I'll give you consolation for your death." He said those words and leaped on a high rock, which years of sounding waves had undermined, and hurled himself into the sea below. Tethys was moved with pity for his fall, and received him softly, and then covered him with feathers as he swam among the waves. The death he sought for was not granted him. At this the lover was wroth. Against his will he was obliged to live in his distress, with opposition to his spirit that desired departure from the wretched pain of life. As he assumed upon his shoulders wings new formed, he flew aloft, and from that height again he plunged his body in the waves. His feathers broke all danger of that fall, and this new bird Aesicus plunged headlong into the deep, and tried incessantly that method of destruction. His great love unsatisfied made his sad body lean, till even the spaces fixed between the joints of his legs have grown long. His neck is long, so that his head is far away from his lean body. Still he hunts the sea, and takes his name from diving in the waves. End of Book 11, Part 3. Recording by David Goldfarb, Houston, Texas.